like Newtonian scientists rather than poets or emotional writers. So Rousseau also developed not only a different view of political life and of the nation, but also a somewhat different view of nature. And unlike Voltaire, Rousseau was self-educated, he was poor, he was a loner. He was also born in Geneva in Switzerland, so he grew up quite removed from Parisian life. As he was growing up, he had no mother. His mother died in the week after he was born, and his father had little interest in him, so by the time he was 16, Jean-Jacques felt more or less separated from his home life and his community, and he ran away when he was 16, claiming that the city gates had been closed to him one night when he came back after a walk, but in fact, one suspects that Rousseau just wanted to leave. And he set off wandering. He lived in various places. He walked around France. He spent many years traveling and reading and studying, but he eventually went to Paris, hoping to make his way somehow into the cultural life of the time. But Rousseau never really fit into the salons of Parisian life. He had strong intellectual ambitions, but he didn't know how to behave in the salons. He felt out of place, ill at ease. There were stories about Rousseau simply jumping up and running out of the room, puzzling the people at the salon. What happened? Why is Jean-Jacques acting in this way? He would be abrupt. Later, it turns out that as historians have studied it, they found that Rousseau had some health problems, including even a problem with urination, and he was unable to sit in the room for long periods of time, and he would simply jump up and run out of the room to go to the restroom. But people, of course, would be shocked, and they wouldn't understand, why is this man simply running out of the room? So there were things about his personal life that made it difficult for him to fit in. Also, by the late 1740s, Rousseau was living with an uneducated woman named Thérèse Levasseur, with whom he had 5 children. And all of Rousseau's children were given to orphanages. He never raised his own children, something he was widely criticized for, and this, of course, has given rise to a great deal of psychological speculation. Was the abandonment of his children some kind of psychological response to the loss of his own parents? Was Rousseau unable to come to terms with the idea of parenthood? Well, we can't really know, but we do know that he did give his children away, and this was something that was often used as a way to criticize him. Now, Rousseau was poor, but he became suddenly famous in the 1750s by winning a literary prize from the Dijon Academy for his discourse on the sciences and arts, which argued that civilization was a decline from the state of nature. In other words, Rousseau challenged that fundamental idea of progress that was at the heart of much 18th century thought. He argued that the arts were declining as people moved away from nature. And the same kinds of themes appeared in another of his influential works, the Discourse on the Origin of Inequality, which appeared in 1754. This is usually called the Second Discourse, and it claimed that people living in nature had been free and equal, whereas life under civilization was filled with inequality and a lack of freedom. So again, it was a story of decline rather than of progress, both in the world of the arts and in the world of political and social life. But in addition to writing about politics and social life, Rousseau wrote novels, including a wildly popular novel, the Nouvelle Heloise, the New Heloise, a story about a failed tragic love affair. He wrote a book about how to educate children in ways that would foster their natural virtue, a famous book called Émile, about child rearing and education of children. But in the end, Rousseau was most concerned with issues of social equality. And he stressed in his writings that people were neither free nor equal in modern societies, but he believed that they should be both. They should be free and they should be equal. And in this sense, Rousseau goes far beyond Voltaire in his political commentary. Rousseau's most famous political work was The Social Contract, which was published in 1762, described the traits of an egalitarian society, It began with that very famous opening line, "Man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains." This was a kind of dramatic opening line that every author yearns for in their great book, a line that people continue to quote, "Man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains." And Rousseau's key argument stressed that there was a link between liberty and equality. In other words, to be truly free, people must be equal, as in fact, according to Rousseau, they had been when they lived in a state of nature, so that a good society, a free society, would be one that allowed for social and political equality, especially political equality, although Rousseau was also very critical of private property. Now, Rousseau's conception of equality suggested also that nations are founded on the dignity of the common people rather than on social and political hierarchies. Although he said that only men should have a political role, he simply ignored the idea that kings represented the sovereignty of the nation. For Rousseau, it is the people as a whole, the common people, who represent the nation. And this assumption leads to that second key theme of the late Enlightenment, the belief that sovereignty lies in the people rather than in social elites like nobles or in the king. And this theme, sovereignty of the people, had also appeared in America in the late 18th century, in the American Revolution, in the Declaration of Independence, which claims independence on behalf of the American people. And the Declaration of Independence in America attracted very wide attention in France. The writings of Jefferson more generally were interesting to people in France, but the Declaration of Independence was particularly important. And so the later Enlightenment of Rousseau, and of Jefferson for that matter, added equality and new views of national sovereignty to earlier Enlightenment themes such as the importance of reason, tolerance, and the belief in progress. And now I want to turn to the ways in which these themes of the late Enlightenment got worked out in 1789 and in the following decade. Because the sometimes conflicting themes in Enlightenment theory became much more apparent after 1789 than they had been before. Because in the context of the Revolution, the claims for individual rights often collided with other claims for equality or the nation. And this is why I say the Revolution, in a sense, was the culmination of the Enlightenment, but it also pulled the Enlightenment apart. The early and the late Enlightenment fell into a kind of tension. But at first, all supporters of the Revolution were united in endorsing the events of 1789, especially the famous Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen, the beginning declaration of the Revolution in the summer of 1789, which claimed that all human beings have equal legal and political rights. And the new revolutionary leaders created a national assembly and began to dismantle the privileges of the nobles and the social elites, privileges from the old regime.